And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for Deborah Kobylt Live. And please welcome Dawn Lafreeda. Dawn is the largest female restaurant franchisee owner in all of America. Let's think Denny's restaurants. Dawn owns currently 80 Denny's restaurants. And if you think that she was born into some kind of money and it just floated her way, I'm here to say nope. She's got quite a story to share. Dawn, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to get to share insights with other people and share a little bit about your journey and hopefully, help someone get where they want to go on their journey.
I also want to add that you are the executive producer of a documentary that honestly is taking America by storm called Show Her the Money, about female entrepreneurship and female venture capital. So we're going to talk about that as well. And our dear friend Catherine Gray introduced us, and we just actually did a show with her and also award-winning actress Sharon Gless, who's your best friend.
My very best friend.
Yeah, we just came off of doing that interview, but I also wanted to take a little extra time to talk about you and your journey in the world of business. So thank you.
Thank you. And Show Her the Money. I mean, that is a passion project. You get involved in things you're passionate about, and once everyone sees this film, you can't help but be passionate about what you as a woman can do just to help change the lives of other women.
Yeah, well, since we're talking about that,
world, really,
no doubt about it. Now let's talk about briefly, women get what percentage of venture capital out there to start say it again.
Yeah, 2% of 238 billion that's available. Can you believe that? 2% of that goes to women, and women have a lot of great ideas. So if you really think about what our world is missing out on by not investing in women, and one of the things that the film says really well that I think is an important line in the movie is that if you invest $10,000 in a woman, it's going to go much further than if you invested that same $10,000 in a man. Because as women, we've learned how to make our money stretch, right? We've had to overcome different obstacles. And so we're good with making our money go far. Because if it's the only money we're going to get and it's our only chance, we're going to guard it, manage it, take care of it, and make sure it does as much for us as it possibly can.
It's a very important film, and it talks about that. And it also, highlights female venture capitalists. It highlights female entrepreneurs, how that all blends together. And then, of course, your expertise as a business owner coming from at a time when I don't even know if women got venture capital.
There wasn't venture capital. There wasn't it. I think it came much later, and that's why, when I started my company, there was no bank that was going to believe in this young girl who had no credit. I had to take money off credit cards. I had to think out of the box. And you look back on what you go through to start your business, and every period of time has different opportunities and different challenges, right? So in one way, it was an opportunity, but there were just as many challenges back then. You just have to find the means to which you can hit your goal with, right? So for me, I knew it wasn't a bank. I knew it wasn't venture capital money. I didn't even know what venture capital was. I don't think it existed. Banks, it's like, forget it. I mean, I couldn't even open up a bank account when I started my company. I went to the bank and I said, gosh, I just bought this restaurant. I've got all my corporation documents. I need to start a bank account. And they're like, are you sure you're not just the waitress there, honey?
Ooh.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've come a long way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go back to you're 16 years old. And then we're going to go back a little further from that too. But let's start. You're 16 years old. What were you doing?
Well, when I was 16 years old, I knew I had to get a job if I wanted a car, if I wanted anything. We grew up with very little. My mom divorced my dad when I was about 14, but really my whole life she was a single parent. My father was not the best human being on the planet. And so when I was 16, there was a Taco Bell that was walking distance from my house. I got a job there for 6 months till I could afford to buy a car that would drive me, to where I could get a job at Denny's. And the reason I wanted to get a job at Denny's is that my mom was working as a district manager at Denny's, and she loved the
Oh,
job, and um, she knew somebody in Fullerton had a need for a hostess. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity for me to get into the restaurant business instead of, fast food, get into family dining. And my ultimate goal, really, my mother was a waitress before she worked at Denny. So I saw that at the end of the day, she brought home tips. And that was something that interested me. I was so poor, I just wanted to have a little bit of money. And I was thinking, wow, if I could be a waitress, I would have tips and I would have money. And
wow.
well, it all worked out. It wasn't easy getting to be the waitress. They wanted to keep me as a hostess, but I started negotiating for my next position. And, Denny's has been very good to me. So when you can start out as a hostess and build a little empire, it's a brand that was a perfect fit for me. And I have a lot of loyalty to them. And, they've helped me along the way to reach my goals.
You had to talk to your manager into moving you from the hostess
Correct.
to a waitress, right? I mean, there were your early negotiating skills at
Yeah,
work.
they were. And what happens is when you grow up poor, as I did, you saw what everybody had that you didn't have and you wanted it. And when I saw that these waitresses were making so much more money than I was, I'm like, well, I just want that position. And so I said, I made a deal with my manager. I said, look, I'll still be your hostess on your busiest days on the weekends if you give me a shot on any shift being a waitress. And he said, okay, you got a deal. So I worked weekends as a hostess. I worked during the week as a waitress. I turned into the best waitress he had. And soon, I hung up my hostess apron and I became just a waitress. And I was making tips. I saved as much as I could possibly save because as a child, I worried every month, is the rent going to be paid? How hard's my mom going to have to work? So I never overspent. I was a good saver because I was always worried. And working as a waitress at Denny's and bringing home money every day gave me a sense of security and comfort.
Wow. What was going on at home where you were so concerned and worried? Would you walk us through that? And what was your childhood like?
Yeah. Well, you'll learn about it in the film, but I'll give you a little glimpse into I'll tell you, it happens to more of us than people want to admit. There's a lot of shame associated with it. But, my father molested me as a child and from a very young age. And I will say that happening was a lot of the reason for why I needed to be independent, why I needed to make money, why I wanted to own my company, why I didn't want to be controlled by anybody, why I wanted to be in charge of my own life. I never wanted to be dependent upon another human being.
And I want to be very clear, you're close with your mom. Your mom did not know at all. And she's been a big
No.
support to you, correct?
Oh yeah, she's been a great support. And I tell the story. I speak at various organizations and schools. And there was a event. I was speaking at my children's sports banquet to about 600 kids, all between 6th grade and 11th grade. And I was doing my speech and I read it to my partner and she goes, well, I think you should leave that part out. I said, I said, I can't. I said, because if there's one kid in the room I thought I was the only little kid. If there had just been one person I could have talked to or knew I wasn't the only one. And I guess, some of these stories are in the film and I don't want to give too much away,
No.
but there's things that happened in my life that were very profound that made me aware that I have to have a larger voice about certain things. And one of them has to do with speaking at a high school and just the statistics and the numbers of children that it happens to. And, when we're young, we think we're the only one, but I was sitting around with a bunch of girlfriends. I was about 24 years old and there were 10 of us. It happened in some form to 7 of them. So it's a big thing.
Well, we always think we're alone when something terrible happens and we hide it, right?
Well,
And we carry
we're
it through.
young. We're little kids. We're young girls or young boys, and we're so full of shame and embarrassment. And like you really think, oh my gosh, I'm so alone. Who do I talk to? And, there's a lot of other things that go when it's happening in your own home and when it's someone you know and when you don't know what you're walking into each day. And I mean, it's a painful place to grow up in. But with
I
that, what I want to say is I wouldn't be who I am today
yeah.
if that hadn't happened to me.
Let me ask you though, you could have taken two turns. There's a lot of people who will go down who will take a different route, feeling awful about themselves, understandably, turn to alcohol and drugs. What was it that, you decided, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make something of myself. I'm going to build myself up. I'm going to make money so nobody can control me. Like I wanted to tell someone out there who might be listening, who's struggling and thinking, gosh, me too, but I feel awful. I can't get up and do anything because I feel so badly about themselves. What advice would you give to them?
Well, there's two things that stand out in my mind. When I was a young girl, I didn't have anybody to talk to. So all I
Mm,
could do was pray. And every day I
mm,
would ask God to make it better, give me a better life. Please let me not
mm.
worry about money. Every day I prayed. I had no one I could tell because the threats from my father were so big. The consequences, if I told, were just horrifying. So I prayed, and I will say that everything I prayed for, I got as an adult, every
Wow.
single thing, which it's amazing. And then the other thing is that when you're going through a trauma like this, you can either, like you said, go down a path that's not good, or you can say, I'm going to prove you wrong. Because what a pedophile does to keep someone down is they constantly put you down and make you think that you're less than and that you're ugly and you can't do it and you're fat and all the things that maybe you aren't, but you start believing. Well, I decided I was going to prove him wrong. I'm not stupid, and I did it as a way to say, look, I'm going to show you I'm not the person you're thinking that I am. Not that I cared what he thought, but I never wanted to have the kind of life that he provided.
Yeah. You also just mentioned a few moments ago that your partner, um, you've been with Lupita for 30 years, so you also were coming up at a time when perhaps having a partner, being gay was maybe something that a lot of people might have hidden, right? Were you always comfortable with your sexuality and coming out with your sexuality?
No, I don't think I was always comfortable with it. But here's what happens. You get to a point in your life where you really feel you have to be authentic. And in
Yeah.
the process of, coming through the abuse that I came through and doing therapy, and I realized that I wanted a better life, and a better life wasn't about lying about who I was.
Mm,
And, you know, when you fall in love, when you're not in love and it's not the person, you maybe don't feel like, oh, I've got to go share with the world because who knows if I'll be with this person tomorrow. But when you fall in love and you want to share your life and you want to do things right, I feel you owe it to that person. And, Lupita, she wasn't out to her family. And I said, look, I can't go back in the closet. I can't go to Thanksgiving and be your best friend.
right.
And she had to go tell her whole family, and it was a very hard process for her. They were all very Catholic. She had made up ideals in her head about how she would be accepted or not accepted. And at the end of the day, what she got is a gift from every one of her family members and a better relationship because they all understood why she maybe wasn't home for Christmas or why she had other priorities.
Mm.
She had a whole nother life. And once they knew who she was, they all had a much closer relationship.
That is so critical because I grew up with someone very, very close in my immediate family who kept his life hidden throughout his entire life until the day he died, right? And I've always thought, well, it's really not my story to tell, it's his. But it affected so many of us because he was living a lie. And it's so important for people to be able to speak their truth because you're right, it frees you to do what you're supposed to do in life. So that's a very important
Well,
lesson.
Yeah, and
Dawn, go ahead.
I want to share two more stories about what an important lesson it is for people who are just struggling with any type of thing that they don't want to share. Um, when you have children, which we had children about 10 years into our relationship, first off, you don't want to teach your kids to lie. So you want
Right.
them to feel the love, you want them to feel proud of their family. So having children was another reason to say, I'm never going to lie about who I am. Now, the interesting thing that happened maybe 10 years ago, 9 years ago, is I never did gay stories. You know, I didn't say, oh, hi, I'm Dawn Lafreeda, I'm gay.
Right.
You know, I'm Dawn, you know, and this is what I do, and this is my partner, and these are my children. I never hid it, but I didn't just really come out all over America. And I had bought
Right.
some restaurants in Chicago. I guess it was 2011, and a friend of mine ran a newspaper called the Windy City Times, and it was a gay newspaper. And she said to me, would you do a story for me? And I'm like, uh-oh, I've avoided these, you know, not because I was ashamed of it, because I didn't know how it would affect the brand Denny's, the customers who might not be gay friendly. You know, I had this idea in my head of why keeping that to myself, not putting it public, you know. I mean, I was out, but I just didn't have it in the newspaper. So I said to my friend Tracy Bame, I said, you know, let me talk to Denny's because I want to make sure that, you know, they're on board with this too. So I called Denny's, I called the CMO, and they said to me, you know, Dawn, not only would we like you to come out for the brand, we'd like to come out with you. And that story changed so many things for the LGBTQ community within Denny's, because what happened that very same year is I was featured on the cover of a national franchise magazine. And when Denny's went to their annual shareholder meeting, they shared the story in the gay newspaper. And that spread to its employees that lived in South Carolina. And the letters I got and emails I got from employees who said, you know what, I didn't know my employer was okay with my lifestyle. I didn't know they were so accepting. I didn't know. And by you telling the story and Denny sharing it, I feel so much better at my job. And I thought, oh my gosh. I mean, I didn't even know the impact something like that could make. So my telling the story finally publicly made other people within Denny's feel great about their own self.
And that's leadership. That's leadership right there.
Well, and you know,
Without,
it goes to show how we always just should be authentic, share who we are, because there's somebody across the room somewhere that you're going to change or impact their life.
and again, the film Show Her the Money. You know, it follows you at home. So that's why people really need to go out and see this. It's so wonderful. And your sons, they are twins. They are in college. They are magnificent, adorable, handsome, and very smart. I've also met them at one of the screenings in Santa Monica. I know they're very proud of their mom, right? And they're following this.
They are. They're very proud of having two moms, of the, you know, the accomplishments that we as a family have done. And, you know, their whole story of how we had them is it's a whole nother interview. I mean, because that was a gift, a beautiful gift of having those children and the journey we went on to have them. And so they know the story of how we all came together, and we're very close, and they're very proud, and they're the greatest gift in my life.
Magnificent. You've both done a tremendous job raising them. But for those of our people in the audience who don't know, can you briefly touch upon that, would you?
Which part?
Having the boys.
Well, we had them biologically.
Right.
And my brother said to me, you know, sis, I know how busy you are. If you ever want to have children, I would be willing to help you. And this was many years before I'd met Lupita. And my brother wasn't married at the time, and I didn't think anything of it. Then I meet Lupita, we fall in love, we want children. My brother's now married with 2 daughters. And I go back to my brother and I say, you know, Robbie, I said, remember what you told me? And he said, yeah. And he says, well, I have a wife now. I need to ask her and talk to her. And my brother donated the sperm so that I could have biological children with my partner.
Wow.
And my mother, and I get a little teary about it because
Oh.
it's the greatest gift of a lifetime. My mother, I guess, says to my brother, what made you do that? Why did you do that? He says, because I'm the only one that could give her that.
Wow.
He's my only brother. There was nobody also to carry on the Lafreeda name. My cousin, all my family had died on the Lafreeda side. They had no sons. And well, the two sons had boys. The one boy had no kids, and my brother had daughters. So that my
Wow.
brother was the last one to carry the Lafreeda name. And now, of course, we have twin sons. But you know, the gift in this is that my brother gave me something to last a lifetime, you know?
You got to love your mom, how beautifully she raised you children, honestly, to be such giving, wonderful people. What's your mom's name?
My mom's name is Judy. And, you know,
Judy.
my mom, you know, when you think about Show Her the Money and what we had to go through as women to find funding and build our companies, my mother had to do everything. You know, she had to clean the house, buy the groceries, cook the food. My father never had a steady job. She had to be the everything. And women, we are resilient. We do so much that I don't know why we take it on. I don't know if I think a lot of times people expect it of us. But
Yeah.
if it hadn't have been for my mother, I don't know where I would have been, honestly. And you know, she's not perfect. And she had me when she was 20.
Yeah.
20 years old. So there's a lot of stories that don't make it into the film, but there's a lot of stories that revolve around a house that happens in. And it definitely is painful, but it also shows you that you can overcome.
So let's go back to your story of working at Denny's, first as a host and then as a waitress slash host. And now you're the ripe old age of 23 years old, and an opportunity comes your way and you decide to go for it. And you are now a business owner. I do believe you were destined for this since the day you were born, Dawn. I really do. And you believed in yourself and you went for it. But if you can explain to our audience, back then, you know, you couldn't even go to the local bank. They would have wanted some guy signing for it, right? Could you just tell us what that was like to find funding for that business?
Well, I couldn't find funding. It came from applying for every credit card I could get my hands on, a savings account that I'd built up that didn't have a ton of money. I was scared. I said to my mom, and you know, there's a couple lines growing up that meant everything that my mom told me. And one is when I was 10 years old, I was sitting on her lap and I said, you know, Mom, one day I'm going to own my own company and make a lot of money. And my mom looked at me and said, well, of course you are. Now, if that had been my father, he would have said, you loser, you're never going to do, you know, but my mom said, of course you are. So in my mind, I'm thinking, of course I am. Well, when the opportunity then came and I was about ready to do the deal, I said to my mom, what if I fail? And my mom looks at me and she says, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? You start over at 26. And I'm like, oh, sure, that sounds good. And I jumped off the cliff and I never looked back. And I didn't fail. And I wasn't going to fail. I was never going to let myself fail. That's not what I'm made of, you know. I'm a survivor, really. I started out. You know, that's the thing. A lot of people look at me and they say, how do you cope with this? And how do you cope with that? And how did you handle this situation? And the interesting thing is I look back and I reflect on my life. When you grow up like I grew up with the secret I had to keep and the burden I had to bear, you get huge coping skills. And I think it helped me be successful.
How did you get the money for the subsequent businesses? You know, and I believe at one time you had more than 80 Dennys that you owned.
Yes.
Could you tell our audience how you managed to amass such an incredible portfolio to where you are today? I mean, it's a lot of years, right? It was 30 years, 40 years in between all this.
Yeah, I did a lot of creative things because the banks never wanted to loan me money. And the interesting thing is once you
Wow.
here's the beauty of franchising, Deborah. When you get to maybe 5 restaurants or more and you're part of a franchise organization, there's a track record there. The brand has data. You have a success path. You know, you can say, oh, when you own a Denny's, it does this much average sales. It makes this much average profit. And so you're not as much of a risk. But banks still didn't want to loan money to me. I had to use alternate financing options. So I'll tell you a funny story about a man who helped me. So I had just moved to Texas, and it was after the savings and loan thing collapsed, and I hadn't lived in Texas 2 years. So I couldn't even buy a fax machine. This is when faxes were at the big rage. So I go to the office supply. I need a fax. It's actually like a computer store. And they won't loan me money. Faxes were $3,000 at the time, and I couldn't even buy one because I wasn't a resident. Well, this man overheard me. And he comes up to me and he says, look, I overheard your story, and my son has a trust fund. And what I do is I will loan people money out of his trust fund to get started. So he loaned me the $3,000 for this fax machine. And we got to be friends over the years. And he says, I'm going to teach you how to borrow money. And what he was an equipment finance guy. He wasn't a traditional bank. You paid a higher interest rate. You had to pay a fee when the loan was over. But he says, I'm going to teach you how to borrow money, and I'm going to help you. He says, I'm going to loan you $10,000 and you're going to pay it off. And then I'm going to loan you $20,000 and you're going to pay it off, and you're going to build your credit. And then I'm going to loan you $50,000 and $100,000. And by the time we're done, you're going to have great credit and you're going to be able to borrow money. And he taught me so much just about how I had to build my balance sheet and have my credit rating a certain way.
I just have to say, though, talk about the randomness of a moment, right?
Yeah. I have many of those in my life. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, but you also have quite a little guardian angel on both of your shoulders, I think.
I do.
Really, really looking out for you. And I know you believe that because you are a woman of faith, right? Deep faith in what's happening. Could you tell us about that? Because I do believe that's also helping to push you forward. You really believe. And by believe, I mean you believe in yourself, and you believe in the opportunities and making something of them. Please go ahead.
Well, I've literally had events happen in my life that I can't.
Wow.
So I had a very big problem one day. It was massive, and it was weighing me down. I mean, I was just burdened with, what am I going to do? So I go to bed that night and I pray, and I say to God, I said, God, please, I said, just help me make a decision. You don't have to give me the answer right now. I can be patient, but just guide me. That night I have the most profound dream. It's a road with a fork. And it paints the story for me when you're out on both roads. So I knew which way I needed to go. I woke up the next morning, 40 pounds off my shoulder, made the decision. It was the right decision and never looked back. I had a situation one time, and this is a really weird one, where someone was suing me for something I never did. And they had a high power attorney, and they just thought they were going to get me. And it was all a lie. So I go into the restroom, I go into the bathroom stall, and I just pray. Say, God, please just, let the right thing happen. Let the truth be told. I walked out of that bathroom stall into the deposition, and the person who was suing me, their lawyer said, you get yourself into mediation. This is just BS. I mean, I've had things happen where I know there is a higher power.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
and you believe.
I believe. Look, we all have gotten through terrible things in our life. And how I've gotten where I've gotten, I've had an angel on my shoulder. I've had somebody looking out for me. And whatever it is, I mean, to me, it's God, and I believe and I have faith, and I pray. You know, I'm not
So,
emphatic about it, but I'm a believer. Sure.
so you've got the angel on your shoulder, and now you're an angel investor,
Yeah.
right? We learned that we learned that about you in Show Her the Money. Let's talk briefly about the importance of becoming an angel investor, in particularly in female-led companies. I think that's very important. With women getting 2% of the venture capital funding, I think it's critical because we need to get that up. We need to get it to 5%, 10%, 25, 50. We've got to get it up, and it's because of people like you and Catherine and your best friend Sharon Gless,
Yeah.
the award-winning actress who is also involved in this film, executive producer, and the other women who were involved in this very, very important film about women in business. So now you are an angel investor in other people's business. Could you briefly touch upon how can people start to do that? How do they get in touch with venture capital funds? How do they become
Well,
an,
you know,
yeah,
I think first and foremost, uh, when you watch the film, you
yeah,
learn where things you might not have known. Like we all go out, maybe we invest in stock, we invest in things,
right.
but are we investing in the right things? And I learned through the film just the disparity between men and women in funding, and what women weren't getting. And I thought to myself, women have these wonderful ideas, and if we don't get these women funded, what are we missing out on?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What isn't, there are things a man is not going to invent for a woman, okay? And just like there are things women aren't going to invent for men because our minds don't work to think that way. Like there's probably not a man out there thinking about what we're going to do about hot flashes, or, you know, women create amazing things, not just for women, but women, you know, created and invented beer, right? The air conditioner, lots of important things. So if we don't invest in women and teach women that they need to be investing in women, we're not going to move the needle forward. So the biggest thing that I learned is when I write a check, who am I writing it to? Not that I don't want to invest in men, but I want to be equal or better. For women have been
Right.
underfinanced, right? And I want to change that. And I want to look at the great ideas by women that we can get into, you know, into the universe. And
Dawn,
that's what the film teaches.
why have we been underfinanced? Why? I mean, if you walk into a room and it's a great idea, I don't care if you're a man or a woman across the table, wouldn't you say, great idea, let's get on it? But
You
still,
know,
we're not.
I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I've asked myself that question many a times. I think a few things. I think women, we entered the workforce later. I think the good old boys club was there and founded before we were in the workforce, before we were allowed to have checking accounts, credit cards. I mean, think back to, you know, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. Think back to JFK. I mean, just think back to what his family did and his father and brothers, and women weren't really involved, right, in building business and, you know, all the things that uh, founders do. It was most, and if you were a woman and you were a founder, a man typically got the credit for it. So like if you think about, I want to say a big grocery chain here that's in Texas, it's called HEB. It's going everywhere. It was founded by the wife in Kerrville, Texas, but it was then the husband that went and expanded, built, and it all became under his name. I believe Amazon was started as a bookstore by Jeff Bezos' wife. I mean, I don't know the whole story, but there's a woman behind a lot of the great ideas that men get credit for that we don't always get credit for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So back in the day, it was the wife's job to stay at home, take care of the kids, cook, whatever. Well, as we enter into the 1970s and 80s, you know, women had to start working because things became more expensive. And I think it's been an evolution, and
Mm-hmm.
we weren't in the playing field early. But I think the thing that has been the biggest eye opener is that in 2023, we're still so far behind. I am stunned that it's only 2%. And I feel like we're always going to have to fight. It's hard to realize that we're this far behind, and how long is it going to take till we're even somewhere near close?
Well, I think it's important to go to the schools and talk about it, right? So women, when they're studying business, whatever it is they're studying, or entrepreneurs, people who did not go to school, learn about this critical piece, which is venture capital, getting involved in venture capital, and also as an angel investor to invest in
Invest in
women.
women. And so if a woman says, what can I do? What should
Yeah.
I do? My advice to her would be find a female founder fund, right? Find a fund, because you don't have to do the research yourself, right? You've got people out there monitoring the balance sheet, paying attention to what the entrepreneur is doing, what their numbers are, what their inventory is, what their strategic plan is. They're there guiding them through the process, right? Whereas if you just go write a check to something, you might not have done the due diligence and vetting that the project needs. But if you find a female founder fund, they're going to do a lot of that legwork. So I believe it's a better way to invest your money.
So I know that you're going around the country and beyond, talking about and promoting the film Show Her the Money. I know that's a big part of what you're doing now. What else are you working on other than managing the 80 Denny's restaurants around the country?
Well, I think,
please.
right now, my whole life is, running my Denny's and out there promoting the film and talking about it. And the great thing about the film is that in life, it's always great to have something that you're very passionate about. And I'm passionate about feeding people, and I'm passionate about helping women. So it doesn't always feel like a job. It feels like you're having fun, you're educating people, and you're doing something that you like. And what I want to say, I have to make a shout out to Kai Dickens and Catherine Gray, because if you don't have the visionaries out there to get the story out there, I can't go out and do my part. So these two women with the idea and then the storytelling, have really made a great gift really to America, to be able to teach women to better their lives just through watching this film. Think about what you can achieve if you can start investing in the right things at a younger age, and the fear's gone away. And the part of investing is you don't really know what you should invest in, how you should invest, the tools, where you go to invest. And this just lays it all out beautifully for you. If you go watch this film, you kind of know exactly what to do and can start moving forward on the investment path with as little as you're able to start with. Or as
Absolutely.
much as
Absolutely. A couple of fun questions. What's your favorite food item on the Denny's menu?
Oh, I have so many, but I will go with the Superbird.
Oh, what is the Superbird?
The Superbird is a sandwich on sourdough bread with turkey and bacon and tomato. And I love the Superbird. I love Moons Over My Hammy. I love the Build Your Own Grand Slam, because I can customize it to any kind of concoction that I want. I love the skillets. I've been a Denny's customer my whole life.
Clearly. Since you were a teenager, I don't think you just, seated customers. I think you ate a lot there too. I have a favorite. I love Denny's. Their pancakes. Sorry.
Oh, we have fantastic pancakes.
Best. And scrambled eggs, dry, well done. Sounds boring. My kids get upset. They're like, how could you eat them dry and well done? That's how I like them. And Denny's makes them perfectly for me. No matter what Denny's I go to, I could be traveling. There's one over in Westwood that I'll go to. Because I live on the west side of Los Angeles. It's absolutely fantastic. Those are my favorites. Over at Denny's.
I'm so glad to hear that. I think we all have a favorite at Denny's. And we go for our favorites over and over. My kids go for the lumberjack every single time because of the sheer amount of food, and they're hungry boys, right? So we all love eating at Denny's.
Even the name Denny's, isn't it sort of a happy name? Oh, we're going to Denny's. It's just a great place. My parents, when I couldn't find them, they're in Sarasota, Florida. I'd be calling them at home. This is before a cell phone. I'd say, where were you people? They were older. I was worried. They're like, we were at Denny's till 2 a.m. with our friends. I'm like, what?
I love your parents.
Right?
I love your parents.
They'd go to the Opera down in Sarasota, Florida, and all of them would pile over to Denny's and close the place till 2 a.m. Is that great?
That is
it's just
great.
it's a happy place because it's run by a happy and very encouraging and smart woman. So thank you so much.
Made my life very happy. And I want to say that Denny's has come a long way, and we celebrated 70 years in 2023. Wow. And it took us 70 years. Well, it took us 69 years to get our first female CEO, Kelly Valade. So we have our first female CEO at Denny's. So that's a really wonderful thing for me to get to be a part of, is to see that. And we're seeing a lot more women in the C-suite these days. So that's exciting. Yeah. Aside from investing just in the C-suites, it's nice to see women getting elevated.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dawn, for your time. Our first show with Catherine Gray and your dear friend, Sharon Glass.
I love both those ladies. Yeah, I hope I didn't talk too much, but I love sharing any stories that can help women or entrepreneurs. And you are a delightful hostess and interviewer. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you giving me the time. Anything else you'd like to add, or do you think we pretty much covered it out there? You know, any words of encouragement, inspiration, anything for women who are trying to start something? Because I think a lot of times we run into a roadblock. We're like, uh-oh. Any words?
Yeah, I have a lot of words, but don't give up. Ask for help. Always make your intentions known. You know, put them out there, and you're going to achieve it. If you believe it, you can achieve it. And I am a living proof of that. And don't let your past get in the way of your future.
You certainly didn't. Dawn Lafreeda, thank you so much for joining us. I very, very much appreciate your time. And everyone, you can find my interview with Dawn Lafreeda on all video and audio podcasts with Deborah Kobylt live. Please look that up. Go to your local Denny's. And most importantly of all, please check out Show Her the Money. Great title. Oh my gosh, one of the best. I just love it. And see where it's playing in your local town and city. And, you know, be a part of moving us forward as women in business. And that's
sure.
It's a movement for sure. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Dawn. And we will see you all next time.